and go.
Hi, everyone. Tonight we have Kathryn Dougherty here to give her chapel talk. And Katie graduated actually with me, class of 2005 at Hill. She's a Pennsylvania native, now living in Ohio. And she started out, was working at Johnson & Johnson and has now created a whole new beverage empire and is going to speak to us a bit about that. Exciting. So Katie, thank you so much, and the floor is yours.
Okay, well, thank you for having me. My goal was basically for the next 20 minutes or so to talk a little bit about my time at Hill, sort of my path through college into Johnson & Johnson, what I learned in corporate America, what I've tried to take to the small business that I now run, and some of the lessons I've learned, and hopefully give one or two nuggets that are useful to anyone who's interested in becoming an entrepreneur and learning what that path is like and kind of what to expect. So that's sort of the plan for the talk, and then I'll certainly give my contact information at the end, so anyone watching on YouTube or live can reach out to me if they have any questions. Sound good? Okay, awesome. So like Lindsay said, I am a 2005 Hill grad. I'm very lucky that a couple of these lovely ladies on the line I graduated with, and another one I see now I got the honor of playing soccer with for a few years. I am so incredibly thankful for my time at Hill because of the friendships that it gave me. My closest friends today are the ones that I still knew or got to know when I was 14 and 15 years old back at Hill, and have been with me now for more than 50% of my life. And so beside a great education and appreciation for Saturdays off, Hill also gave me some of my best friends. So I'm incredibly thankful for that. Following my time at Hill, I went and got my Bachelor of Science in Finance and my Bachelor of Arts in Economics from Penn State. I went through their Schreyer Honors Program there and graduated and joined Johnson & Johnson. So for those of you who don't know, J&J obviously is very famous for things like Band-Aids and Tylenol, but the majority of our business actually comes from two other sectors. Big Pharma, so we make a variety of sort of very, very large scale drugs that are available all over the world, but also our medical device business, which is the one that I worked in. So anyone that has ever had stitches has very likely been stitched by Johnson & Johnson. So we make the suture and the products that are used for that. We also do knee replacements, devices that can take tissues out. There's a lot of really cool stuff that J&J does. And so I had the honor to work in the medical device division of J&J for just over 10 years. So during my time at J&J, I had the opportunity to work in sales and finance and accounting, new product development, so like upstream marketing, as well as brand management and downstream marketing, and then a little bit of mergers and acquisition work near the end. For anyone who is in a really large company, one of the hard things to do is to move between functions. Moving out of finance and into marketing was really aided for me by going back to school and getting my MBA, which I did at Drexel, so still in the Philadelphia area. And that really allowed me to take the step from working, in Excel all day on our P&Ls and balance sheets and NPVs, and move into developing products and commercializing them. So whenever you're able to get sort of those different experiences, being exposed to so many different functional areas of J&J has been a huge asset for me as I not only transitioned into, running my own business, but even at J&J, being able to be a really good partner to my finance team when I was in marketing, and to be able to really develop meaningful sales plans and sales training after I had been a sales rep, because I knew what that experience was like. So yeah, anyone that's looking for like advice on kind of the corporate side, I would definitely say try to get as exposed to as many functional areas as possible, ideally doing some kind of rotation in it, or at least getting to know your business partners in those areas, because it'll truly make you a more holistic business leader, as well as a much more enjoyable business partner. So that was kind of, took me up until about late 2019. And then I'd always sort of had a desire to be an entrepreneur and to run a company. For a while, I was like, oh, I'll just keep climbing my way to the top of J&J. It'll just take me like 50 years. Eventually, I'll get there. But when I was introduced to the how I built this podcast on the Apple Podcast app, and I remember the first episode that I listened to was Sarah Blakely's episode about building Spanx, and I remember sitting in the parking lot. I had just finished like a team softball game for J&J, and I was like listening to the end of this podcast, and I got goosebumps, and I was like, man, like this is who I want to be. I want to be this woman who had an idea, worked her butt off, and grew it day by day by day. And it just was so inspiring to me. And so I started learning more about Sarah Blakely and Spanx, and then just kind of fell down this rabbit hole of learning about all of these other incredible female founders and leaders who have built their companies not only to solve an unmet need, but usually to also have some sort of social mission as well. So many of these women, give back, like Sarah Blakely has her Red Backpack Fund. And it's just really kind of this amazing kind of, people helping them through doors, and then them kind of reaching back to bring others through with them. And so when I heard some of these podcasts and started to sort of learn about the path to entrepreneurship, I began to realize that this was really what I wanted to do. I really wanted to build something from the ground up. I had no idea what to do other than knowing that I wanted to probably be an entrepreneur. And at the time, this was probably about 2017, I think, I started listing out, okay, what would be some of the ideas? What are different problems that I see that I want to solve? Which of those problems have a financially viable opportunity associated with them? And I'd made up a list of like all these things. I was like, well, what if we did something with medical devices and sustainability? Because the medical device industry and hospitals are just horrible when it comes to things like trash and being environmentally conscious. So I thought a little bit about that. I thought about, some service industry stuff, but none of it was really, I might have areas of expertise in it, but it wasn't what kind of excited me. And sort of in parallel, I had been making this drink for my friends. A lot of us were triathletes and runners. And so we would get together on Friday nights because, Friday night, girls' night, dinner parties, we loved that social interaction. But we all also got up really early on Saturday morning to go on our long runs or our long bikes or hit the pool. And alcohol was just like not a great option for us on Fridays. Saturdays, they was totally fine, but Friday nights were alcohol free. And we'd have these great dinner parties. We loved seeing each other, especially, on Fridays, you're just like, the work week is over. This went well, this not so much. And, we'd sit down to these beautiful tables and we'd have all this great food and these great friends, but we wouldn't have kind of that sort of special moment where we could have something fancy in a glass and we could kind of have our little cheers and it just to kind of complete that experience. And so what I had started to do for myself and for my girlfriends was I made basically a concentrate of my favorite herbal tea, and then I mixed it with like a Perrier, and I served it to them in wine glasses. And it was this beautiful shade of pink, and it had these like little bubbles, kind of like champagne, and we could really enjoy these beverages without having any kind of calories, any kind of sugar and or artificial stuff, and no alcohol, and we could still have kind of that special complete moment. So that was something I was just sort of doing at my house and taking to girlfriends' houses. They'd be like, do that tea thing. Can you make that bubble tea? I was like, yeah, sure, of course. And it was just sort of this like thing that I did. And it kind of hit me as I was going through this process of being like, what should I do? What's the unmet need that I want to solve? That I was like, oh, I could sell my beverage. I have no idea how to sell a beverage. I have no idea how to start a beverage company, but like, they like it. I like it. I mean, it's solving a problem. Why not? And that's really when I started being like, well, maybe I could be a beverage entrepreneur. And it's incredible the power of Google today. So for those of you who are watching and have an interest in starting your own business, the amount of things that you can learn on entrepreneur.com and just Google searches and YouTube videos, there is so much free content out there. It's incredible. And so I found so much on just like how to set up your basic legal structure, how to figure out, your banking and administrative stuff, how to come up with a website domain and merchant services, just like their true fundamentals. And was able to go through that process and say like, okay, like maybe I can do this. And so I got kind of the basics in place. And then from there in 2018, the question then was like, okay, great. So I can make this in my home. How do I like make a lot of this, and how do I put it in cans, and like, how does that work? How do I get those little things that people scan when they, when they check out? Like, I have no idea. But again, you can go to Google and you can find all these incredible resources. So I actually found what's called a flavor house. They are professional beverage engineers. So you literally work with them on your concept. You send them what you make in your house. I had like little mini Gatorade bottles that I dumped out, that I left over from my stepdaughter's like softball party. Like washed them out, and then I put my product in there, packed it in ice, and shipped it overnight to this flavor development firm. And they said that's very common. They get like all these random packages with people using, Gatorade bottles or, whatever kind of, package that they have to sort of be like, here's what I made. And so I worked with them to basically formulate a shelf-stable, professionally scalable version of what I made. And so we developed 5 products, 4 of which are available now, and a 5th one that we are going to probably launch next year. But worked with them on, the formulation, the procedure manual, the shelf stability. So how long can this thing sit on a shelf and like still taste and look good? How to answer all those types of questions. So I found them, I found graphic designers, I found how to make what I learned are called UPC codes, and how you have to make some for wholesale and some for retail. And you just kind of start, kind of just going little by little, step by step, until you sort of figure out like, okay, so I think I have to do this next. So by the end of, I guess, early 2019, so yeah, like end of Q1 2019, I was at a point where I said, okay, great, so I've got these products, they're shelf stable, they're formulated, I know how to get all the ingredients. I've found some, what's called a co-packer, which is like a manufacturer who would work with me. And so then my next question was like, okay, so now what? How does one commercialize a beverage company? Again, I have just no idea. At J&J, you just go to your, 500-person sales team and say, okay, can you go sell this now? And here's your $1 million budget. And that wasn't quite my scenario. So going from the super large company where you have so many resources of people and time and money, to this one where you're just like, I have none of that. You started to kind of figure out like, okay, this is the next wall that I have to figure out how to get through or get over. And I was very lucky to find there is a women's small business accelerator here in Columbus, Ohio, where I live presently. And I went through their program and came out sort of the other side with a business plan on how to commercialize. And the number one step that was determined out of that was I had to go and fundraise, which was another first. I've never had to fundraise at J&J. J&J is just like a gigantic vault of money. And this is not what I was used to. So I learned, what's a safe note, what's convertible debt, what's a, what's a Series A versus a Series B, are we seed or are we pre-seed? What are the terms? What's a market cap versus a discount rate? Figuring it out, just like all of that, and getting a lot of really great advice from some paid advisors, as well as some people who are just, such generosity of spirit, who could provide coaching and advice on the process. And so we went through our very first seed round in Q4 last year to raise a little bit of capital to do our first inventory run and to prepare for a launch, and to bring on 2 key team members who would help kind of get this off the ground. A sales director who has experience in everything from building distributor and broker partnerships to working with retailers, merchandising, and point of sales, and a marketing manager who understands social media in a way I cannot relate to, and does incredible graphic design and understands TikTok and Instagram stories and like all the things that I don't understand, but she's really good at it. And influencer marketing, that's the other big one that she really brought to the table. And so with the two of them and myself, and the capital that we raised from investors, we launched in January of this year, which makes for an interesting time to launch a business. So that's kind of the journey. And I did leave J&J in Q4 of last year to make that leap. And it is probably the scariest thing I've ever done, and also the most thrilling in a good way, because as scary as it was, you kind of just sort of feel a little bit in your heart like, this is what I am meant to do. And you might be working what feels like 28 hours in a day, but it's the most energized work. I remember one night it was like 1 o'clock in the morning, and I'm like emailing with my attorney about some of our convertible debt information. And I was like, I should be exhausted, and yet I'm so excited. And moments like that really kind of reinforced that I was on the right path. So 3 probably like big lessons that I would say anyone who's interested in, again, entrepreneurship might want to consider. The first one is coming from corporate America. I was like very focused on process, because J&J is world-class in its process. Great process is amazing. Process only kind of matters in entrepreneurship, because you can put everything on the right path, and then a pandemic hits and you're sort of like, all right, so that didn't quite work. And you're just sort of constantly, I think the word pivot is just like so overused right now, but maybe like kind of dodging things where you're just trying to like watch out for these things, and then you see something over there, and you don't want to be like totally like squirrel and distracted, but you also want to kind of try to identify these different opportunities while avoiding all the really scary things that come your way. So as much as you want to put this really maybe tight process in place, I would probably recommend doing something a little bit just more loose, because there's so much unknown in starting a company, and so much that you have to just figure out as you go. As much as process is maybe like moderately important, what is incredibly important is absolutely the people that you surround yourself with. This early in a company, nobody has defined job descriptions. We might say that this is what your description is on paper, but I mean, you could be one day in my garage and we're unboxing and repacking multi-packs, and the next day you could be on a call with Whole Foods. It really varies. I just had a call with my sales director earlier today, and we're going to be opening up some new retailers up in Wisconsin, and super exciting news. And then he talked about how he's going to go down to our warehouse and build pallets tomorrow. So again, just like you have the whole spectrum, and you need someone who is not going to be like, I'm not going to go build pallets, because it has to get done. The other really great example is Mackenzie, who is my marketing manager, and you need those people who know and understand you and your product, and can, just like any good friend, kind of give you some nudges, one way or another when you need it. And so probably the best example of this is we participated in what's called the BevNet New Beverage Showdown, which is a pitch competition, in December of 2019. So it was our first time to kind of share with some industry leaders about our product. And one of the points of feedback was we needed to kind of evolve our packaging a little bit to better differentiate between our SKUs and tell a more elevated story. And so, of course, what happened is I decided that I need to figure out how to do this myself, found about 50 cans of product, got my Sharpie markers out, and started drawing all over these cans. And it was like my total, kind of psycho moment, where I'm just, I'm like arts and crafting, and I'm texting my marketing manager, and I'm saying like, what about this? And she knows enough to say, put the Sharpies away, go to bed. We will figure this out. We will find a proper graphic designer, no offense, and we will talk with them about how to build the brand hierarchy. And so in those moments when someone might be kind of anxious, me, and feeling like, oh my gosh, I have to figure this out right now, making sure you again have those people who will go build pallets and will maybe be your part-time therapist are going to be the most critical people, because there is no roller coaster in this world that I think can compare to the highs and lows of entrepreneurship. You know, the high of, oh my God, I just made 50,000 cans of my product, to the low of, and now we're in a global pandemic. So that is probably, yeah, so process and people. And then I think the other maybe key takeaway would be, there's this Navy SEAL, his name is Jocko Willink, who I just love. He's terrifying and like inspiring and just sort of just a fascinating guy. Probably the exact opposite of me if you were to like look at him and then like look at me in my like little cardigan. But he, I think, is just the most kind of inspiring guy. And he has this just 2-word phrase called like step, go. And I love it because it just reminds me of like every day you just have to take one little step forward. And there are days where it feels like nothing is ever going to get better. And I'm sure so many of us have experienced that this year, not to mention many other times in our life, but probably more acutely in the year that is 2020. And some days you're just like, why am I even bothering? Like, this mountain is too tall. This road is too long. I just am not seeing the light at the end. I'm not seeing the summit. And just taking like every day that little step forward and just going for it. And it's exhausting and it's hard and it's kind of a grind some days. And some days that step might be, you know, the step for all mankind, you know, and some days maybe it's like, you know, a half a millimeter, but it's just about taking that little bit next step every day and just not giving up. I mean, there's just so much truth to those statements, because there are days right now where, you know, with COVID, there's been a lot of challenges. You know, what we call on-premise partners, things like bars, restaurants, cafes, coffee shops, have all closed. Some permanently, some temporarily. Those that have reopened are at partial capacity, and we're a supplier to them. So that's a really difficult thing for us. By the same token, things like retailers, traditional grocery stores, they go through what's called category resets, where they review, you know, what do we want to stock in our beverage section? What do we want to stock in our rice section? And that's where they have an opportunity to look at products like ours and say, here's, you know, here's how we would fit it in, here's where it would go on the shelf, here's how much we would price it at. And all category resets got either canceled or just significantly delayed this year, because grocery stores, as you guys all probably know, are really focused on what their response to COVID is. How are they keeping employees safe? How are they keeping elderly shoppers safe? How are they implementing online shopping? How are they social distancing? What's their mask policy? What do they do if someone doesn't want to wear a mask? Figuring all of that out. On top of it, you all probably read the news about, you know, toilet paper shortage and rice shortage and chickens out of stock. So supply chains were demolished. And so again, you know, stores have to focus their energies on piecing back together a, you know, linked supply chain instead of having all of these gaps and all these stockouts. And so that's proved to be a very difficult environment for any kind of young brand this year, because these are the opportunities to get in front of buyers and to get put on shelf and to do the market tests. And a lot of them have been delayed or canceled. So there are days where I can just be like, God, I should just go back to J&J. I can work my cushy 30 hours a week. I can pull in a nice little paycheck. But I also know that it wouldn't inspire me and it wouldn't motivate me the way that something like this does. So again, I think just if you're looking for, you know, entrepreneur advice, just know that this is what's going to be coming your way. It's going to be the roller coaster. It's going to be, you just have to keep pushing through the muck some days. And it helps a lot if you've got really awesome people to walk through that muck with you, because at least you guys can kind of have some laughs along the way. So that's kind of my story. I'm not sure if that's like kind of enough content, but I would say that if anyone has any questions about any part of the story, whether it's Johnson & Johnson in healthcare, or finance, marketing, or M&A for large companies, or if you have questions on the transition from corporate to entrepreneurship, or questions on how to build a beverage company. I now know the answer to some of those things. I would be happy to speak to anyone, especially anyone in the Hill community. You guys can find me on LinkedIn under Kathryn Dougherty, or you can email me, Kathryn@spritzbev.com. And again, I'd just be happy to help. I love trying to, open the door and behind me and pull others through. So thanks again for having me tonight. And I guess that's all.
Yeah. Does anybody have any questions for Katie, like as we're wrapping up? I know I'm curious as to how you decided, like, when was the time to leave J&J to do Spritz full time? Because I know, like, I have a small little side gig that's not even anywhere close to being like, I'm gonna quit my job. I'm just so intrigued by that. So, like, how, I guess, you decided when was the right time.
So there were two considerations for me. The first one was what the business needed. So for me to go to someone and ask for money and say, hi, I'm going to go build this company, want to buy part of it. If they see that I am still working full time, that probably doesn't give like the biggest boost of confidence. They want to see a founder who's all in. So that was definitely one of the triggers, was saying, like, if I'm going to go and fundraise and be asking for people to place significantly sized bets on me and this organization, I need to be placing that same bet on it myself. The second thing, just honestly, is, and I'm very thankful for this, having worked for a large company for 10 years, I was in a financial place where I could afford to not take a paycheck for a period of time and to be able to invest that money in the company. And so knowing that, my stepchildren and my husband and I would all be financially secure for, a period of time without me having a salary of any kind, was an important part of the consideration. So really making sure that I personally was in a good shape, and then also knowing that that was what was necessary for that next step of fundraising.
Any other questions for Katie? No? If not, that was awesome. Thank you so much.
Milo has questions. That's my dog.
Was that a dog?
Yeah.
Who was that?
That's a dog. He's patrolling our neighborhood. He's 12 pounds of fluff. He's really frightening.
Well, I'm sure that he's ready to maybe like hang out with you a little bit more today. But thank you to Lindsay for another great speaker for October. And I'm not sure 100% who our November speaker is, but it'll be on the second Wednesday of November. So put it on your calendars. And maybe we'll see you at book club or next month's chapel talk. But thank you again, Katie, so much for your time, and for everybody for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me, Allie. Thanks for reaching out, Lindsay, and Shailene and Lizzie and Kiki. So good to see you guys.
Thank you for speaking. I learned a lot. It's so beyond like my life, so it was really, really cool. Thank you.
That's awesome. I'm so glad. Thanks, Shailene.
Love
Just got the little hand clap. You guys are awesome. Thank you again. Have a good night, guys.
Have a good night, everyone. Thank you.